The objectives of this presentation are to provide insight into the property tax levy process and give a summary of the recommended tax levy for 2018. State statutes require the annual tax levy ordinances to be filed with the county clerk on or before the last Tuesday in December. Taxing authorities all across DuPage County send their respective levy requests to the county clerk. Tax bills are prepared by the county treasurer and go out near the end of April. Taxpayers pay tax bills in 2 installments due in June and September. The county treasurer then distributes the village's share. There are 2 main ingredients that go into calculating the property tax bill. The first is determining the equalized assessed value, EAV, of a property. In our region, the EAV is the result of taking 1/3 of the market value of a parcel. Tax bills are then calculated by multiplying the EAV, after any deductions for homesteads or other exemptions, by the tax rate. Here you can see how equalized assessed values have fluctuated over the last decade. Beginning in 2016, we saw the first signs of a housing value rebound, and last year, the EAV was almost back to the level reported in 2012. On a national level, economic growth appears to have accelerated following strong second quarter 2018 growth. Driving the growth appears to be last year's tax package, a stronger world economy, and improving labor conditions. The question is, can this faster pace of growth be sustained? In Illinois, the state has lagged national growth patterns, but appears to be gaining steam so far in 2018. However, Illinois continues to face a fiscal overhang that is likely hindering growth. On a local level, we have seen firsthand evidence of a strengthening economic landscape. In examining tax bills throughout the village, there are factors that cause a village's share to be different in certain parts of the community. These differences are mainly related to school districts, fire districts, and townships. An example of that is shown here with tax bills from Bloomingdale Township, one from the north end and one from the south end of town, and a tax bill taken from Milton Township, south of North Avenue. With at least a dozen different taxing authorities, it can be confusing to understand who gets tax levy money and how much. The currency chart shown here represents the breakdown of taxes retained by each taxing district. On average, and depending on where you live, 10.9% of one's property tax bill comes from the village. So for example, if your total tax bill is $6,000, the village receives 10.9%, or $654, while the remaining portion goes to other taxing districts. Schools get the highest percentage by far, about 71%. When we peel back the layers of an average $6,000 property tax bill, we are able to see what each separate taxing body receives. An important distinction within the village is that there is no park district taxing body. Instead, the village has a recreation department. What this means to residents is that the $654 includes a levy for recreation. And because the village includes recreation as part of its overall tax levy, our comparison to other municipalities can appear higher. A major advantage to having a recreation department, as opposed to a separate park district, are the benefits of consolidated administration, human resources, finance, purchasing, information technology, and other support services. To give you some perspective on the difference between park district tax levies and the village's levy for recreation, note in the table that the village had the lowest tax rate in 2017 compared to surrounding communities which have separate park districts. Going back to our previous $654 property tax bill example, this chart shows you the breakdown of what services the village provides with those tax dollars. In the 9 years from 2008 to 2016, the village essentially held the line when it came to the property tax levy, keeping a promise made by the mayor and village board of trustees to be fiscally responsible with public dollars. As a direct consequence of state actions in 2017, however, the village was forced to increase the property tax levy by 5%. With the village seeing strong and steady commercial development fueled by improving economic conditions, staff is able to recommend a 0% increase for the 2018 tax levy. This concludes our presentation. Please contact Director Poling should you have any further questions about the property tax cycle.